Today on the Ever Onward podcast, we have Erin Anderson, the director of the Idaho Botanical Garden. She has been there for about 9 years and does amazing things there. We wanted to get her on to talk about the botanical garden and what it means to our community. But she's also been a long-time leader in the Valley. She serves on the chamber, Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce. She's also been part of leadership groups of several nonprofits here in the Valley. We're really excited to catch up with Erin and hear the latest at the Botanical Garden. Prior to Erin, we will hear an Alquist update from Mark Cleverly and Holt Hage. And Holt's going to talk a little bit about his competitiveness, which should be fun.
Good morning. We're here for another little update, quick update. I'm Mark Cleverly, Chief Leasing Officer with Alquist.
Holt Hage, VP of Leasing, Alquist Development.
So we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to talk about projects. We're not going to talk about tenants, but we are going to talk about competition and kind of our previous life of, especially I wanted you and Keikoa at some point to talk about, because you guys competed at the highest levels, right? Both of you did. And want to talk about how that sets you up for success in your career, how it sets you up for success in life. And with our projects, like how does that motivate you? How does that what makes you tick, right? And so just wanted to kind of briefly go through that with you.
Yeah, you know, the value of competition, especially early on in life, I think is it's, you know, you can't. There's no substitute for it. Mm-hmm. I think you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about, you know, just the process of setting goals and achieving those goals, and different things that motivate you, right? For me, I just remember early on in my life, the chief motivating factor was the fear of failure, and that's a very powerful motivator, right? Mm-hmm. It can either motivate you or it can completely cripple you. And so for me, fortunately or unfortunately, it was something that really motivated me. Now, if the fear of failure prevents you from even engaging in, you know, the goal that you want to set, then that's a problem, right? But if it's...
Yeah, because how many times did you fail?
You fail all the way.
All the way through, right?
All the way through.
But you can't stop.
You can't stop, right? And I think, and I remember there was a point, you know, halfway or whatever through my career, somewhere in my teens, where I sort of figured out that it was part of the process, right? And it's, you know, it was actually even became more of a motivating factor understanding that, because you understand, hey, you know, this is these setbacks are actually the times when you actually go back and look at them. And we've talked about this before, but when you go back and sort of dissect and unpack each competition or each sort of goal or milestone, and you say, man, this is like where I made the biggest advancements, was learning from why I, you know, didn't succeed in sort of these milestones along the way, right? And so you say, okay, this is what I actually need to do to succeed. But the only way you're going to figure that out is by failing or you know, not achieving that goal the first way through. And actually, another thing you and I were just talking about, but I had my daughter Cleo is very engaged in Taekwondo. She loves Taekwondo. She goes to Master Kim's Taekwondo class like 4 or 5 days a week. It's her thing. And like me, she's like all about individual sports. And so, but I was at class the other night, and Master Kim at the end of these classes, he's got all the kids lined up, and he gives like this message, this little kind of motivational speech. And the other night he gave the speech, but embedded in that discussion, that 5-minute kind of talk, was this line. I just want to, you know, he said, you know, there's no elevator to black belt. There's only the stairs. You know, and then he went and he kept talking about kind of other things, but that one line really stuck out to me, and it kind of reverts back to sort of what motivated me and this whole thing that we're talking about with process and patience and all of these things, is that, you know, there's no, you know, substitute black belt for anything. There's no elevator to X.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's business, sports, personal growth, it doesn't matter. I mean, in our business, there's no elevator to a successful project. There's only the stairs, and the staircase that you're on, you know, if it's a really kind of straightforward project, it's like a nice, you know, gentle set of stairs. If it's a really complex beast of a project, like, 4th and Idaho or some of these really large trophy projects we've been working on, it's a staircase with like nails and like covered in ice, and so it just depends. But I think why it rang so true to me is because it applied to my early athletic career, where just acknowledging that that you're on the staircase, I think, is a very important piece, right? The stamina and the patience that is required to achieve big goals is huge. And I think it gets missed a lot, right? Because you attach yourself to these goals and you want so badly to achieve the goal that you want to take the elevator, but there's no elevator. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, only stairs. I think thinking about that too, right? Where each one of our projects, we're going to have, we call them opportunities, but you're going to have setbacks. You're going to have things that come up in every project that we've ever done, right? I mean, one of my favorite, I'm a big basketball guy. I know you were skiing and the individual stuff. I'm a big basketball guy, the team sport. And one of my all-time favorite player is Michael Jordan. And there's a quote about him that how many shots did he miss? How many turnovers did he make? I mean, all that stuff, right? I mean, even the best player that's ever played the game had failures.
Yeah.
Right? But it never stopped him from succeeding, right? I mean, look at his career. He's, 6-time NBA champion, NBA Finals champion. So it's, for us too, it's thinking about all that. Every project has opportunities. Every project has setbacks. We're on the stairs, per se, right?
Yeah.
We're on there, and we're grinding, and we're moving forward on those stairs, and it's hard. Every project is hard, but what makes us really successful is the team, and then allowing all of us to go and do our job, and together making it a successful project. At the end, it's like, okay, look at what we did. But what most people don't see are all the setbacks and the opportunities that happen over the course of a 3 to 5 year period in each one of these projects.
Yeah.
But those are the ones, like, we remember them.
Yeah,
because,
the more setbacks, the more rewarding
absolutely
the outcome, right?
Right? We remember every single one of them because we're like, remember when this happened, right? And we keep moving forward. We kept pushing, plugging. So it's awesome to think about it, right? And you think about, like, 10 Mile, Eagle View Landing, City Center Plaza, all the setbacks and opportunities that happened. And look at them now.
Yeah.
Right? It's pretty awesome to think about.
Yeah, we got a bunch of grinders in this office that are,
That's right. Pretty motivated
we rock and roll, man.
guys and gals. Yeah, super sweet. All right, thanks, Holt.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Smart.
Yep.
Erin,
Hi.
thank you for coming on. This is going to be fun.
It is. Thanks for
It's
having
going to
me.
be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Some of these I know guess really, really well, and some of them I don't. It's a good mix.
That's good. That's good.
So you're doing great work at the Botanical Gardens, all of our favorite place to go. But I can't wait to hear more about it.
Perfect.
Be a great opportunity. But can you start telling us a little bit about you?
Sure. What kind of things do you want to know?
Tell us everything.
All the things.
Like,
Great.
How did you end up in this wonderful place, Idaho and Boise? And tell us a little about growing up.
That's great place to start. So we moved to Idaho. My family did when I was 9 months old. Oftentimes people ask if I'm native to Idaho because that's a really big
barely
thing here.
missed it.
I barely missed it, but I say yes. And then I tell people, well, I moved here when I was 9 months old, and then they give me the grace to say, you're pretty much native. So we moved to Idaho first. We moved to Mountain Home, and then we moved up to Boise when I was about 5. I went to elementary, junior high,
Was
and
it
high
a
school
military
here.
move?
No. My grandfather worked as a civilian at the base, but my parents had my dad and his family moved to Mountain Home in, I think, the 70s, and my mom, who's a little bit of a wild child, her brother was in the Air Force, and so he was stationed in Mountain Home, and she got sent to live with him for a short amount of time. So that's where my mom and dad met. was in Mountain Home when they were 16 and 17 years old in high school. And then they moved back to Indiana, where my mom's family's from. And then and my brother was born here. And then we moved to Indiana, and then we came back.
I mean, that's about as native as it gets.
I think so.
I mean, you basically were in Indiana just for this short pregnancy, and then you're back. I'm giving you the native card.
Thank you. I
Officially.
appreciate that. It's a really big deal for us here in Idaho.
I am not authorized to do so, not being a native myself, but
you'll do it.
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Wow. So then you grew up in Boise.
So I grew up in Boise, went to junior high and high school, and I graduated from high school and I went to Boise State. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I knew that it was mandatory that I go to college. My parents made that very clear, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I had been at Boise State for a few years, and I thought, how do I get out of here the soonest possible? So I started meeting with advisors and talking about the things that interested me because I just wasn't quite sure. And I decided to major in political science. And I was really interested in consuming information and figuring out how to interpret that information. And I really enjoyed the paper writing and the analysis of my degree. But I also knew I didn't want to be an attorney. Most people who major in political science go on to be an attorney. Yeah. I worked the year that I graduated on a campaign, and I decided I didn't want to be in politics either. Excuse me.
Doing that once can kind of cure you.
Yeah, so politics wasn't my thing. But from there, I got my first job really out of college other than working on that first campaign, and I started writing grants. I worked for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, and I started a book program where I wrote grants for books so that we could help families build an in-home library for kids.
That's cool.
And that's how I got started in nonprofits. It wasn't something that I knew I wanted to go into.
Went right to it.
Went right to it.
Super rewarding. I mean, I think if you can marry business and desire and passion with nonprofit work, it makes for a pretty good way to work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to be able to wake up every day and have a passion for what it is that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I've worked for several nonprofits throughout the years. But when I was...
What are some of those?
Yeah. So I worked at St. Vincent de Paul. I also worked at the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. I made a big leap. When I was 29, I started as the executive director for a small organization called Boise Urban Garden School. And I had done some work in fundraising and programming. But working there, I learned so much. My first job there, I got paid $34,000 a year as the executive director, and we had a $100,000 operating budget. I mean, it's just crazy to think about.
So it's private school. Those school things can be so hard.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And it was when I first started with the organization, the executive director before me, she had left on great terms, so there was this really wonderful handoff, and there was a couple founders who then turned it over to the first executive director, and I was the second. We were operating this program out of a church on Franklin, up on the bench, and it was an all-day, 6-week program for kids and teaching them how to garden and how to grow food, and then they would learn how to take that food into the kitchen and how to cook it. And it was a full seed to table type of a program. And when I first started, within the first week, I met with Doug Holloway from Boise Parks and Rec, and we were in a meeting together. I had no idea what I was doing in the meeting. Somebody just said, you need to go to the meeting. And Doug pulled me aside and he said, hey, what do you know about community gardens? And I said, gosh, I don't know a lot. I didn't have a background in gardening or horticulture. I just had a desire to do it. When my girls were younger, we started doing some backyard gardening. And so I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed teaching my kids about food and where it comes from. In a state that's so rich with agriculture, I just felt like that was really important for them to understand. But I met Doug Holloway, and he said, "What do you know about community gardening?" And I said, "Well, I don't know a lot, but I'm on my first week here at the job, but I'm willing to learn." He said, "Okay, let's keep in contact." Well, the city of Boise, there was a time that it was very popular for community gardens to pop up at city parks. And so there were several community gardens, and there was another one that was coming on, and that was at Ustick and 5 Mile. So Doug and I stayed in contact throughout my time at the garden, and it got to a point where there was a family, and they were going to donate a piece of property they already had to build a park on Ustick and 5 Mile. It's called Comba Park, and there was a community garden there, and there was a building that they wanted to donate over to the city to create a permanent place for my program.
Oh, wow.
So it was really this amazing opportunity for a very small
Yeah.
organization. I think at this point we had a $150,000 operating budget. There was a builder who's going to donate his time, and everything just really came together. And so I just look back and laugh, because within the first year of my program, we had created a strategic plan, and one of those goals was to align ourselves with a sustainable funding partner and somebody that could really help the program grow. And in that first week, I met Doug, and then all of a sudden I turned around and I was running the community gardens at the city of Boise and helping create ordinances to how community
What a
gardens
great
would
story,
run.
though,
Yeah.
how it all comes together.
Yeah. Have you spent time with Doug Holloway?
Yes.
He's amazing. He's one of my favorite people in the Treasure Valley. I just think he's so great. And had I not met him at that time, I don't know where that organization in my
Incredible
career would have gone.
community guy, and just the reputation of just how can we fix things and make them better, and
Yeah.
what a cool thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's an amazing story. So how many years were you there?
So I was at Bugs about 6.5, maybe 7 years.
Wow.
And then the position for the Idaho Botanical Garden came open. And at that point, we had merged with the city, and Bugs had become a program of the city. And so I was a city employee. And I had this half and half position where I was a city employee, and I had taken over another program at the city that had to do with environmental education. And I was still the executive director for Bugs and doing the fundraising. But then the botanical garden job opened up. And it just so happens there's not a lot of people in the state of Idaho, or especially in the Treasure Valley, who have run a garden-based nonprofit organization. So,
Perfect fit.
yeah.
And
it
so
wa-
what year was that?
So I started at IBG in 2016, in September of 2016. Wow. And it has just been a amazing and wild ride.
9 years.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great. And to go back to your kids, so 2 daughters?
I have 2 daughters. One is 20, almost 21. She lives in Bellingham and goes to Western Washington. And I have an 18-year-old daughter, and she's a senior in high school at Boise High School. So they have really grown up in this mom nonprofit world.
Are they inspired, or they want nothing to do with this whole thing?
Oh,
It goes
that's-
either way with our kids.
That's a great question. I think that they're inspired.
Good.
I also think that they've been dragged along and drug along through a lot of activities, and they've been in videos, they've been in photo shoots, they have really had to be flexible with our schedule. I go to a lot of fundraising events and evening activities, and we're doing things on the weekends, all that really surround nonprofits in the community, and we're very active in the community in that way. And I think probably the most challenging part for them is when my partner and I, who he's also very active in our community, when we're out in public, it's very annoying from them because we can't walk 5 steps without having a conversation. And sometimes they just want to buy some groceries.
Can we just do what we're doing and go home, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's been a tremendous example and a great learning experience for them too. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see where they go and what they want to do. With my youngest and going away to college next year, it's amazing to watch them grow into their own people. But I always think when I look back at them when I first started, even my career and when they were very young, people always say, when they have young children, what are they going to be like? I just wonder what they're going to be like when they're older. And my thought is they're exactly the same when they're 2 and 3 as they are when they're 20. Their personalities don't really change that much. They're just bigger.
Yeah, and it's I give a few talks, and lately I've been giving a lot of them. But I talked to a high school last week, and I was asked the question, how do you find your passion, and how do you really go into the dream job and the thing you want to do? And I really believe, and I'm sure this is the way with your daughters, if you're kind of grounded in your whys, and it's less really about the job. A little bit. There's a lot of jobs where people can be very, very happy if it matches their why and their reason and their passion. And it may be the various things. It may be healthcare. It may be nonprofit work. It may be, but if you're passionate about people and that's where you find your joy and passion. I think a lot of kids, I think, as you do mentoring, they get really hung up on exactly what it is. And it's okay to think that, hey, I can be happy in a lot of things as long as I have my list, my priorities, my goals, the things that I'm going to do, and the things that make me tick. There's probably a lot of really great jobs that match that.
Yeah.
And then it's lifestyle and a lot of other things that go into it. But
I agree.
Isn't it amazing the opportunities these kids have?
I agree completely. And one thing that I really recognize from kids these days is they're so much more
Sounds so
connected.
old.
And I do sound so old.
I am.
I am old. And that's okay. Is that they are so much more aware and connected into the greater community and into the world than I was at that
Yeah.
age. And that's what I think is going to be a really significant benefit for them, that they're already thinking about what fills their cup and what their values are. I don't remember being a senior in high school and really thinking about that. I thought, well, I know I need to go to college. My parents have told me that's what I need to do. But I didn't have the thought process of thinking through what my values were. And luckily I fell into a place because of some decisions and because there were some opportunities that opened up that really led me down that pathway. But I think kids are much more thoughtful about that now.
I think they're way more thoughtful. I think that there's a lot of real negatives to the way they socially interact. And I think there's a lot of amazing positives, and that's one of the positives. I mean, they're plugged into the world and the things and everything going on, and they're just much more aware. I also worry as I interact with them socially. In fact, in the talk I gave last week, I just said, hey, listen, if you're sitting in this room today, if you can figure out how to walk up to someone, look them in the eye, shake their hand, connect with them emotionally, and express your desires and genuine self to them, you're going to win.
Yeah,
'Cause
I
there's
agree.
not that many of you out there anymore.
I
I
agree.
think that's the real big thing as you interact, is that the kids that are able to do that in a world that's become largely technical, especially with generations, that we still connect with these people.
Yeah.
We still, I mean, you know how business is done, right? I mean, you're still, it's human interaction, and yeah, there's Teams meetings, and yeah, there's all this other stuff, but ultimately you're going to meet and try to connect your wishes, desires, and dreams with other people, and come together and find common ground and do great things together, and that's where joy comes from, and that involves a lot of real soft social skills.
Yeah, I agree. I could not do my job without the personal relationships
Yeah.
and connections. I can't imagine a world where, of course, nonprofits that are so human focused, where that's not the majority of my day or future executive directors or future nonprofit workers. Now, there's a lot of things with technology that are going to help streamline
Sure.
some processes, but
And
gosh,
listen, I'm an old guy. I'm like the Gran Torino, Clint Eastwood character. Get off my lawn. But it is going to change. I think AI is going to make it even more crazy out there. But I do think these real human, soft skill characteristics that make us humans are going to get more and more important as they become more and more. They adapt to the changes.
Yeah.
Hey, one other thing I was going to ask you is another question I got last week that was a really good one, and you're the right person to ask this to. Is they said, well, how do you make a difference in the community, and how do you plug in? And I just said really quickly, go volunteer. I mean, one of the things, we've been here a long time, but as I talk to my friends that are in other cities and even in the Intermountain West and Pacific Northwest, we have a community that really gives, and so many strong, thoughtful leaders within the nonprofit community. And then they all have boards and subcommittees and ways to volunteer.
Yes.
And it's one of the first things I say when I'm asked, hey, how do I plug into a community? Go volunteer.
Yes.
Like go look at something that you're passionate about, and then just go meet people and serve and interact, and you'll be surprised how they will use you and need you and maybe put you on a subcommittee, and pretty soon you're a graduating senior from CUNA High School and you're working at the Botanical Gardens volunteering, and you have this group of people, and all of a sudden you have all these connections. Speak to that a little bit, because I think it's a powerful tool for young professionals looking to engage.
I agree. I think it's I agree. I think it's not only important for young professionals, but I also think it's important for every age demographic.
Good point.
For young professionals, as they're trying to determine where are their values, what are their values, what direction do they want to go in for their career. But gosh, lately we've had so many people who are retired who are reaching out looking
Excellent
for
point.
community.
Excellent point.
And at the Botanical Garden, we're lucky enough that we have these opportunities. Our volunteer program is really growing, and it's growing in all age demographics, but specifically in that like over 60, where people are coming together and they could be doing, gardening, horticulture. They could also be coming together for events and helping support the garden and the events. But we see that with all age groups. And I think the impact of that, not only for the organization, but for the individuals, is you really do build this sense of community. You have friends, you have people who have the similar values and beliefs as you do. So whether you're choosing to do that by coming to the Botanical Garden and helping us manage and maintain our grounds, or make sure people aren't, getting wild at one of our concerts, you can go to the food bank. You can go to your local church. You can, go to a lot of organizations that are supporting children in our community. There's just so many ways. And I think, in Idaho, we have, I don't remember the statistics, but I think it's pretty high per capita, the amount of nonprofits in the state of Idaho. So it's not hard to find a group and to find your people.
Yeah.
And by getting connected in, whether you're 17 or 18, or you're in your 40s, or you're in your 60s, I think it helps also create a connection to the greater community, not just the small community that's at that organization. You start to really understand the importance of everyone coming together, especially in a time that we are so we're so challenged to connect with each other, whether it's over politics or values. And I'll tell you what, when you come to, say, the Idaho Botanical Garden and you're volunteering, we're not talking about politics. We're not talking about, divisive
You're
topics.
finding things that you connect with, and you find that, hey, there's a lot of things, there's still, I think the way things are set up now, there's so many things that just pull apart and thrive on that and profit on that, and especially the way we consume media. But it'll be what saves us, by the way.
It will be.
It's going to be neighbors and coming together, and what do we have in common, and how do we do this together?
Yeah.
That ends up saving us. It's not going to be this other stuff. So.
No. And we see that a lot, not only through our volunteer programs, but through a lot of the events at the Botanical Garden. You can come to a Bonnie Raitt or a Lord Huron or a Steve Miller Band concert at the Garden, and nobody is talking about politics. They're talking about the artist. They're talking about the musician, and they're not talking about these topics that are dividing us as a community. They're talking about their love for music, or they're simply sitting in community and enjoying being in the beautiful garden and the outdoors. And I think for me, that when I see that, it just makes my, it fills my cup. It makes my heart full, because those aren't the types of conversations. Everybody's coming together and they're having this beautiful shared experience.
Let's shift to the garden. Let's talk. Give us the history and give us a little bit about the nonprofit, what it does, and some of the exciting things that I know you have. You've hit on a little bit, but let's formally kind of let's celebrate it.
Great. Sorry. The Botanical Garden was founded in 1984 by Dr. Christopher Davidson. And the goal of Christopher and a handful of community members was to bring horticulture to the Treasure Valley. The space that we're located is directly adjacent to the Old Idaho Penitentiary, and it's very unique in that there's 3 gardens I've heard that are directly adjacent to an old penitentiary. One is Alcatraz, and the other one I have no idea where it is. I don't even know if it exists. So we're very unique at the Idaho Botanical Garden just in the location. We're in a very historic district. We were founded, this is our 41st year, and we have grown exponentially over the years. Expanded our mission a little bit to incorporate more community gathering spaces within the programs and really the product that we present. Where we are now is we have 15 acres of developed garden spaces. Our mission is to connect people, plants, and nature, and we do that several ways. Most obviously, and first and foremost, we're a botanical garden, and we want to be a place of beauty, and we want to be a place that displays plant collections that grow well here in our region. We are in the sagebrush steppe ecosystem. That's important. You are not going to see tropical flowers and plants at the Idaho Botanical Garden. We want people to come and visit our space and see how they can replicate the beauty that we have at the garden in their own homes. Additionally, we focus on educational programming. We work with children and adults. We see over 6,000 kids that come through the garden gates for activities like field trips that are based on horticulture and gardening and just ecosystems in general. The majority of our programming, if not all, is STEAM-based, so that's science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And then we also have adult programming. So we bring adults together to talk about specific things as they're related to horticulture, soil courses, planting, pot courses. Sometimes it'll be more artistic. We've had things like in the past painting courses, but really an opportunity for people to grow a love and an appreciation of the outdoors and feel really connected into plants and the land and seek the positive benefits of that. And then the last component of our mission and what it is that we accomplish at the garden is through our events and cultural arts. And those are what many people in our community know us for. We host Outlaw Field Concert City series where it is, world-renowned musicians that are coming to the garden and playing in partnership.
I just got something this morning. I think Charlie Crockett's
coming for the second time. I think that one will be a
Charlie
sellout.
Crockett.
He's amazing. He's amazing. We work with Seymour Concerts on that series, so
Yeah.
I am not directly responsible, so don't request shows from me. Seymour Concerts does such an amazing job of filling that series. But we also have a small concert series also. It's called Great Garden Escape. It's really a family-friendly series that's located up in the garden. We have other events and activities, Winter Garden Aglow, which most people have been to in the community.
Total tradition for us forever. Yeah.
All of these events, they're fundraisers for us.
Yeah.
That's how we keep the garden gates open year-round. That's how we ensure that we're providing the educational resources that we provide, and ensuring that the garden stays beautiful. And there's a couple other programs that people are pretty unaware of that we're really proud of. We have a pretty deep partnership with the Idaho Department of Corrections. There's a women's correctional facility that's located in the district, and we have a workforce development type program with women from the correctional facility where they come to the garden and we train them on event logistics and management, horticulture, provide work for women from the facility. And the goal is that one day when they are no longer incarcerated, that they will have a new skill set to be able to bring into the community. Or for the ones that choose, we like to keep them on, and that they
love that.
continue work at the Idaho Botanical Garden. A lot of people don't know about that program, and that's okay, because we really are protective of the women from the facility who work at the garden, and we want to, support their growth and their development and their anonymity. But it's one of those opportunities that we have to give back to the community in a way that many people don't know about.
And I'm sure you've got some story. I mean, the impact of when someone is coming out and getting a job, which is their identity and their purpose. I'll bet you have some really great stories. And anyone
We
I
do.
know, I've got a lot of friends that do that, and I think it's part of the best work that's done.
Yeah. As we're looking at expanding our garden and continuing to develop the uncultivated acreage that we have, one of the goals is to build a horticulture therapy garden, really with women from the facility and our community in mind, because being in nature and working with plants is very healing. And when I first started at the garden, it was probably 2016 that this happened. I was up at Shore Lodge and enjoying a weekend, and I was in the restaurant and talking about what I had done. I think I was with the bartender and a couple friends, and enjoying, a drink. And he was asking me what I did, and I said I worked at the Idaho Botanical Garden. And a woman that was sitting at the bar just a few stools down said, "Did you say you work at the Botanical Garden in Boise?" And I said, "I did." And she said, that garden saved my life. I said, "Oh, that's really interesting. How so? Tell me about that." She was incarcerated at the facility across the street. And when you're first living in that facility, you're able to go out into the community and do some volunteer work. And we're one of the selected sites that you can do volunteer work. And then as you continue on in the facility, then you are open to be able to do different types of work and jobs. But she was in the position where she was able to volunteer. And she said that she was really depressed. She was incarcerated. She had children. She was no longer able to see them at the same level that she really wanted to see them. And it was really hard for her to get out of bed. But one of her, the other women who was in the facility started bringing her over to volunteer at the garden. And she didn't want to come at first. But when she started coming and being able to experience nature and just the healing powers of being outdoors and being in the garden, she was really able to start getting out of bed and start moving forward.
It's beautiful.
And when I heard her and I heard that story, I just thought, wow, what other impacts can we have here in our community that are beyond what we recognize, beyond the children that are coming in for the programming or the, massive amount of people who are coming in for our events. Like, there's probably, for that one story, there's probably thousands and thousands of other stories that are similar of how connecting with nature in that way really helped people.
Yeah, what a beautiful story. You also have plans for some expansion. Your website's here for those that are watching on YouTube. So it's a great place to go navigate. You got your events and everything else. Is there any information on the future of the garden? And talk about that.
There is information. It's kind of a little bit hidden, but you can find it. So right before the pandemic, we had started looking organizationally of what's next for the Idaho Botanical Garden. As I mentioned, we've been here for 40 years. We have grown bit by bit. The garden is a little bit of a Frankenstein garden, is the way that I would describe it. Sometimes parts and pieces of it have literally been held up with duct tape and dental floss over the years because we have been so strappy in the way that we have expanded. It's been garden space by garden space. And we recognize that there's a need and a desire in our community to build a space that really meets the needs of the community and to provide a better experience when you visit the garden? How can we start pulling down some of the duct tape and dental floss and, really provide a space that is not only a beautiful space, but a functional space and can continue to offer amazing opportunities for our community? So we started doing some work on what's called a master plan, and a master plan for a botanical garden. It's essentially a map of what the garden will become, but it's all based on community need and the programmatic needs of the space. So as we began working towards this master plan, we got a little derailed with COVID and had to postpone and pause. But in 2021, we really dove in and started having some community meetings, bringing in key stakeholders to determine what is it that we need in Boise, what type of a garden could we be, and what should we become. During that time of the pandemic, I was volunteering quite a bit at the Boise Farmers Market. That was my social outlet. That was the only thing that I could really do to see people. My partner and I were, and sometimes the kids. And we were talking with some of the organizers of the market and with their need to have a permanent location for the Boise Farmers Market. This is the one that's over on Shoreline. Yeah. If you've been here in Boise for a long time, at the old Kmart. I think it's funny we all still call it the old Kmart.
Right.
It's been years. They had a desire to have a permanent space. We know also in our community that there's organizations, some of them that popped up during the COVID pandemic, like City of Good, which helps to feed and support families here with some really healthy, great food. There's also a lot of cultural arts groups who are struggling for performance space. We have a lack of performance space here in the Treasure Valley, especially for a certain specific size. So we started in 2021 meeting with not only community stakeholders, individuals, but also other nonprofits in the area to say, what are your needs and how can we all come together on this project? So in 2022, we finalized our new master plan, and it's pretty massive, and it's a large undertaking that, as you know, Tommy, sometimes master plans take years and years and years. But we are working right now at a phase 1 of the plan. And phase 1 of our expansion plan includes several different components. 4.6 acres of new garden space. Those gardens are going to be, there's an outdoor amphitheater, working a lot with the cultural arts groups in our community to determine what does that stage look like, what is the size. We'll seat about 1,200 individuals. We're building an arboretum in partnership with a local foundation. Boise has a arboretum desert, essentially. Our closest arboretum is maybe up in northern Idaho or at Red Butte Botanic Garden, but for being the city of trees, we have no official arboretum, so we're going to build an arboretum. I'd mentioned before our interest in horticulture therapy. We're going to build a horticulture therapy garden, a new vegetable garden that's close down to the entrance of the space, and a scholar garden that's going to be dedicated to Christopher Davidson, our founding director.
That's cool.
So lots of new beautiful spaces, but also we'll be building, it's about a 22,000 square foot visitor center. And within that visitor center, we'll have indoor, permanent, year-round classroom space and event space, and also a food hub, which is essentially a network of individuals, but also a physical space in partnership with City of Good and the Boise Farmers Market, where local farmers that are selling produce at the Boise Farmers Market will be able to utilize the space to minimally process, package, and store their product to get that out into the greater community. And that would be through programs like City of Good for low-income families, but also so that farmers are able to move that into the market through restaurants or hospitals. And then we'll have an official parking garden, we call it, but a parking lot. Right now it's a dirt lot. So there's a lot of really great opportunities within the first phase. As you look at the second phase and the third phase of the garden, the second phase, which will come much later, will really be focused on infrastructure, of our current garden space and some redesign, but it'll essentially stay the same. And then the third phase, there'll be opportunities for some very minimal cultivated educational space that focuses on the ecology of the Boise foothills. So it's a lot.
It's amazing, and such a need, and such a, I mean, the location too. You talked about the location by the penitentiary and where it sits in the kind of base of the foothills there, and where it sits in Boise. What a great, I often sometimes think about places like this that have taken hundreds of years to thousands of years, but hundreds of years as a civilized, Boise organized place, and the history behind it, and then where that twists and turns, and then the role of the botanical garden in that historic place, and how it continues to give back. It's really pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Leadership, talk about that, or time's going really quick, but you are very well known as a very dynamic leader, and you're on the Boise Chamber board in the Valley. You said you're out and about, but you're constantly leading and doing things. A lot of our listeners are leaders or looking for inspiration as leaders. Tell us some of your key go-tos for leadership and kind of some of your philosophies.
Yeah. Where I really like to put my focus in my leadership is in listening, and helping bring people along. I have a master's in organizational leadership and change management. And when people ask me, like, what is the key to change and change leadership? And I really say you have to listen, and you have to involve people in the decision-making process. When I first started at the garden, there was a lot of opportunities to make improvements, and I had spent some time focused on that, literally buying chairs, and new desks, because things were falling apart. But what I've learned about leadership along the way is dialogue and surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you are really what make a difference. We don't make a lot of decisions at the Botanical Garden. I don't make a lot of decisions without getting feedback from others. Now, there's a couple situations where you're thrown into a crisis like the pandemic and you just have to start making choices. But I think that's what makes the Botanical Garden such an interesting organization, and what my philosophy on leadership has been is how do we continue to maintain dialogue. Now, sometimes you're going to have to make a decision as a leader that everybody isn't on board with. But when people feel that they have had a voice in the decision to be made, I think it changes the perception of that change, and helps people move through the change. But change is hard. There's a grieving process with it.
Well, and you're just spot on. I mean, I think one of the things I say all the time is vision, clarity, plan, action, and vision that's leadership. But then the clarity part people skip over, and clarity is where you do get everyone on board, listen, make sure everyone is harmonizing in thought and mind before you go forward, before you even get to the plan. Because if not, they're not going to be part of this plan.
No.
If they weren't included in that clarity. So I think that's really, really great. Lastly, talk about Boise.
Yeah.
This place.
I love
know you
Boise.
love it.
I love it so much. What I love about Boise is sometimes I think the best qualities and the worst qualities about people and organizations and communities can be one and the same. I love that I cannot go to the grocery store without running into somebody I know. And sometimes I want to go to the grocery store and just get my, groceries. But I love that feeling of connection and community. Yeah. And I think that as a city, we are constantly moving forward and looking to do better and looking to make a difference. And when I meet with people who have not been to Boise and they come to visit, sometimes they're connected with the garden or an activity or an event, or, we're hiring a consultant, and they say, tell me what I need to know about Boise. And I say, people are very kind and they're very friendly, and it's not fake. When you walk down the street and somebody waves at you and smiles and asks how your day is, they really want to know. And there's hundreds of stories that I could tell about how I've experienced that. But I think because of that, we're attracting a lot more individuals into our community. I think that's one of the reasons that we're growing so much, is that Boise and Idaho, it's people who are very heartfelt and very genuine and really want to be supportive of each other and see each other grow. And you don't get that in a lot of other communities. And I think there's a lot of challenge with the growth that we're experiencing, but we get to have a lot of very interesting and thoughtful conversations about what that looks like and how we can do better. And I think Boise has always been focused on that. I can't think back on a time, and I'm almost native here, and to Boise, that we haven't been looking for a better way to support our community members. And we see that in the everyday small acts that people, will go through and will contribute, and in some of the bigger ways as well.
That's beautiful there. And I do, and you're just hitting on so many things. I believe with everything it is the small acts, right? We're all involved in this community, and there's always these big visions and plans, and whether it's at the botanical gardens or the city or wherever, but ultimately our days and our happiness and our interaction are the small acts. It's the little things that people do and say, and the way they're thoughtful, the way they connect. And I think it's just such part of our heritage and our people. I love that about this place.
Me too.
Whether you've been here for your whole life or it just becomes part of you. And you hear that from people that are new here. They're just like, I just love this place. I also think that we have such a sense of pride in our community.
Yes.
It's so clean. It matches that heritage and friendly, but it also, whenever we have guests in town and we go downtown or take that, it's just, they're like, they hadn't been here before, and they're like, it's so clean and nice and safe and all those things that make it so great. So, well, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
It's a amazing service to be such a dynamic leader and lead such an important nonprofit in our community, and it touches all of our families as we come visit and enjoy, and can't wait to watch the progress as you grow and keep doing great things. Let us know how we can help. For anyone listening that needs to know more, it's Idaho Botanical Gardens.org.
That's right. That's right.
I'm
Come out
sure.
and visit us.
Come
We
visit.
have plenty of activities and opportunities, and even just time to wander around in the garden when it's nice and quiet. So
I love it. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thanks, everybody.